So welcome everyone. Here today we are covering reporting in ARM. Just kind of a general look at the features that we have in ARM for generating reports. We won't probably dive into very many specifics of a particular report, but kind of want to cover all of the options and capabilities that are available within ARM. So start here on the screen just with a trial. I just opened one of our tutorial trials just so we have something to generate a report with. And so you can start the reporting process from the File menu. There's a Print Reports. It's also this little printer icon. If you use the toolbar more, you can also go up to that icon and open up the Print Reports. So this dialog here has a lot of components, and we'll just kind of work through them one by one. On the left-hand side here, you have the list of available reports. So these are really all the different components and pieces that ARM can generate as part of a report. And you can see they're split up between protocol reports and trial reports. So depending on the file that you have open, you will either see the list of protocol reports or trial reports. And here I have a trial open, and there's a lot more you can do with the trial. It's got the data, it's got the site description, so there's a lot more options there when you're in the trial. But really all of the content today will apply whether you're in a protocol or a trial. You can do all of this. It's just a matter of what components, what information can we generate depending on the type of file that you have. So as you can see, quite a long list of different options, and these are each just different components. We kind of call them reports, but then again, the entire printout that can contain more than one of these components you could also call a report. So maybe I'll try to refer to these as components here, because you can build a list of them. And so, for example, I'll take an easy one like the trial treatments. This just spits out the list of treatments that you have on the treatment editor. And if that's a great start to your report you want to build, you can select the component here. And in the middle of the screen, we have the report set list. So I'm going to press the Add button, and that will put the trial treatments component here in this box. And this is the list of components we want to include in our report. So I can choose trial treatments first, and then if I want another component to be in this report just right after the trial treatments, and maybe I want to do the spray seeding plan. So I'll choose the standard spray seeding plan. I can even double click on the name of the report, and that will also be the same as pressing Add. And so now we have two different components in the list. And maybe since I have data, I also want the AOV means table. I could add a third component to this list. We're really just generating a list here of the components to combine all in one printout. As we click on these different options, you'll notice the main middle section here of the window is changing. And so this is presenting the various report options that we have related to the component that you've selected. So here for the trial treatments, we see the report options for this component. Do we want to display the product amount totals? What treatment field should we include? So there's a lot of options just depending on the different reports. The spray seeding plan has a few more. There's some calculations involved. So kind of the more involved the report is, turns out there's even more options. And probably the king of the report options, the AOV means table, actually has this main one and then several other sections related to it as well. And so you can see different groupings of the options to try to organize them all for you. I'll go back to the trial treatment so we don't have to wade through quite as many, but this is really the main options, and you can change them just right on the screen here for what you might want to do. There's also a more options button in this corner, and that will bring up those very same options here in a separate window. And it will also compile any other related options as well. So there's, in this case, a page setup. If we're including product amount totals, there's settings for that. So you have all of them in one spot. You can kind of really compile all of the different options that might be related to this report all in one dialog to configure. I also want to mention the help button. You'll see this on pretty much any ARM window, but I think of all of the different screens, probably the report options are one of the most beneficial for this ARM help feature. So pressing that button will bring up a help topic that is specific to the report options you are looking at. And so we make sure with each page, with each option that you see on the screen, we have a description of the option, what it does or what it doesn't do if it's not turned on. Sometimes there's recommendation of this is statistically a recommended option, or typically people choose this, information like that for you. So that can be your best friend as you try to wade through maybe finding I want this report to do this, or can this report look a certain way. Those options can be helpful to discover what it can and cannot do and what you can configure. So once you have made your way through configuring some of the options, a useful tool then for saving your selections is really to save this report set. And so really when you want to kind of bookmark, if you will, what you have selected here. So that way you can always change if you need a different kind of report later, you can always come back to the way you have things right now. And so that is this next box over here, the available sets. And so, for example, if I like what I have here, I want to be able to generate this type of report for many different files, or I want to do it later on as well. There is the Save Set button, which will allow us to save a file that is basically just all of the options and the chosen components that we have. And it will just save that configuration, those choices, into a file, so that way we can come back to this very point in time again in the future. And so here it's just prompting us to save. Let's give this file, we're going to create a report set file that will just live on my computer. And so I recommend naming the file to kind of match what your usage is for this report. So in my case, I'm just going to call it our webinar example. Maybe this is our final trial report. Maybe this is our protocol summary. Maybe this is, whatever, I would say whatever the purpose is for the report, that's a real great thing to name the report set. And it's going to save it just on my computer here. And there is an option to give yourself a longer description. This is really only used if you are to open up a set. ARM can display this description for you, so you can kind of jog your memory as to what you wanted to use this for. So that will come in handy if you forget what that meant. And so here now I have that name I just gave it will actually show up in this list. So I have a fairly long list of other report sets that I've created. And really the advantage here is if I choose a different set, here's another webinar I must have done. you can see the options changed. So the components that I selected are now different. And some of these options within there could be different as well. Again, it's kind of bookmarked whatever I had set at that point in time. Here, there's a trial summary. So I have mostly, data-oriented information. And so it's changing the components that we've chosen, and it's also the options that we had set. And so the advantage here is I can come right back to this set that we just created and have everything set just the way we had it a moment ago. So that's a powerful tool to kind of standardize and repeat reports that you have created before. And the nice thing with these files as well is, it was saved onto my computer, but it is just a file that's sitting there for ARM to read. So you could actually go out to that location and take that file and email it to a colleague. And they could then save that file onto their computer, and their ARM could use it as well. So now you could have everyone in your office actually generate that same report with the same options without everyone having to manually go through and make all of those selections every time. So that can be helpful as well. It's just a .set file that's saved in that GDM def folder. Along those same lines, I'd like to highlight one other feature here in the available sets. And it is this previous sets button. So it's in the list of available sets where we were choosing the different report sets we've created before. And this previous sets is actually a history of the different reports that you have generated on your computer. So every time that you generate a report, from this dialog and you press next to actually create the report, ARM actually saves the report set, whether you've given it a name or not. So in this case, I have given it a name, and so it's already saved as a file. But here a few days ago, I generated an AOV means table, and I did not give it a name. The nice thing is ARM actually saved that set. So all of those options that I had when I generated that report was actually saved here in this previous sets list. So, as you hear this report set, you go, boy, that would have been great to know 2 weeks ago or last year. You can actually utilize this previous set. So, if you're thinking, well, yeah, last year I did all that work to make those really nice, trial summaries at the end of the year, and now I'm sitting here trying to, reinvent the wheel to find the same options I chose last year. Well, just use this previous sets and go back in time essentially to when you were generating reports the year prior, and find that maybe that's this one right here, the AOV means table and assessment summary. And you can see the date stamp of when that was generated. And if you choose that, you can press OK, and that will load those options. So just the very same options that you had set at that point in time. And the nice thing is now you could give this a name. So now you could save set and say, hey, this is what I should have done last year. Now I can do it now, and give that a name and use it in the future. Again, that was this previous sets option underneath the available sets. I feel like it gets hidden a little bit. It doesn't stick out very much. So I like to point that out, especially when showing people the advantages of a report set. Last thing I want to cover here as we just look at the report set is this global report settings button. So there are some options that really end up applying to all of the treatment components. They're not specific to any one, but they really end up affecting all of the reports in your printout. And so that is the global report settings. And so they have their own button to make it easy to bring up here. And so, things like treatments, that pretty much all of these reports end up having the treatments displayed in some way, shape, or form. So that ends up being used. There's the page heading you can customize, the borders that you may have, the footer on the page. So all of those kind of overall type of options end up coming here in the global settings. And you may recognize some of those headings because when we did click into the more options, in this case for the AOV means table, we do also have those global settings there on this dialog. Again, kind of just reaffirming the fact that those options do apply to each and every component of your report. And we'll look at a couple of those options later on as well, just to see the impact that they can have on your reports. All right, so let me go back and let's load that webinar example so we can see what report we really have created here. So I'm going to press the next button, and that is going to take the report options that we've configured and run them through this trial. And so depending on your report and maybe some of the options you have chosen, there may be different actions and dialogues that appear. And so in this case, I see the application plan. This is related to the spray seeding plan. And there's an option to turn this on or off, but this is just a nice way in this case to choose specific application codes and kind of review what treatments are in each application. If you're doing the leaf wall area, this is really handy. It shows you all of those calculations, things like that. So I will make a selection to help generate the spray seeding plan report. Let's see if we have any other prompting. Nothing else here except this report messages. So this is ARM's way to let us know of anything else that is important for the report we've generated. Here we see some errors, but as I read most of these, it's referring to some of the data and the assumptions of AOV. So that's related to the AOV means table report. So not so much errors in generating the report, but just kind of on a data review perspective, there might be some things we want to look at, but we won't dive into that very much. There's also a warning about maybe the mix size I've selected in application A is different from what ARM calculated. So usually warnings are just kind of an FYI. It's good to kind of read them just to make sure, and then you can kind of confirm that in this case, yeah, I always run with the 3 1/4 liters, so that doesn't surprise me. But just the type of thing ARM likes to make sure you're aware of. So finally, depending on the different dialogues for the different reports you have, you'll end up at this print dialog when those are all finished. And so we have some more options really specific to printing this report out. The page orientation, the range of pages, if you don't want to print all the pages on the report, things like that. Typically, I start with the preview button here. So this is a way to actually see what it is we have in this report. So ARM will generate the report on the screen to look at, and I'll zoom in a little bit. And so we have our page heading, which again, we can configure in the global options, the trial header information, and then we start with the report components. And so this is our treatment list. So this is really our treatment component. We also have those product totals I think we had turned on. And now we have the next report in our set was the spray seeding plan. So that starts right about here. And that also has a product quantities. And as we scroll down page 2, we now see the AOV means table. And there's several pages that is generated. and then finally page 4 is the end. So this is a nice way to see what we have. Again, all of those components were just put together. Typically, each section starts on a new page. In my case, they did not because I have this option turned on. So there is kind of a default page break in between each component in that report set. But if you prefer to have it condensed, so as you saw in this example, we had the first 2 reports fit nicely on one page. And so if you want to kind of condense down, save paper, or just kind of compress the report a little bit, this option is a nice way to compress things. I'm here if I'll just turn this off and preview again to show you the difference in the report. So here now on page 1, again, we start with the trial treatments, but then we just have all this blank space because as soon as the trial treatments report was done, then we started on a new page, that next report component, which was the spray seeding plan. Again, a lot of blank space at the end of this page, so that way we can start with the AOV means table on the 3rd page. And that extends for a few, so we ended up with one more page, a little bit more space on each of those pages. So that option is nice, compress things down. A little word of warning though, it can also make things a little messy if you're doing something like an AOV means table report. If that is not first in the list and you are removing your page break, sometimes that means table would start like halfway down a page. And typically that makes the report kind of messy just because that means table is so long, usually depending on how many treatments you have. And so when that starts to split across several pages, you kind of end up with a mess. So that's one trick. If you are doing some summary reports where you're printing out the data or printing out your treatment means, a lot of times it might be better actually to turn this off and allow that to start on a new page. So that's really where the preview is important, I think, to see what you're looking at before you just print out a paper or run with what you've configured. So in addition to generating this report to paper, we actually can take this report and create a file instead. And so there's a couple of different options. We can print to Excel, print to Word, or print to PDF. In each of these, there's just a few options that you can configure depending on the output type as to how that file is generated. I have a quick rundown here, a slide of just some of those options you can do. So of course, you can generate that report. We saw it to paper, but here also you can take that file and create a spreadsheet. And so with Excel, it doesn't really maintain any of the spacing or formatting. It's really the farthest from what you see in the preview. Really, that's just because with Excel, it's all column and row based grid. And so as you stuff some of that information into a grid, it might not line up, might not look quite as nice and polished as you saw on the preview. But on the positive side, it can be useful for data calculations, as you would have each data point in an assessment summary or the AOV means table, you would have that data in its own cell. So if you were wanting to use that for a graph or some other calculation, it might be beneficial to generate the report then out to Excel. Comparing that with the word processor, Microsoft Word in most cases, that does a pretty good job of looking like what you would see in the preview. Sometimes there's a few quirks depending on page size or margins. You end up with some differences, but overall it does a decent job. And really the benefit for that is if you are going to apply some further edits or want to combine the file with other documents, sending it out to Word then is a nice way to have this editable document that can continue to be worked on. So that would be an advantage of Word. Whereas the last option, the PDF, that really does the best as far as matching to what you see in the preview of ARM. Pretty much every time it's exactly the same. The downside is there's limited editing, so it's almost just a flat image unless you have a paid copy of Adobe. Then there is some editing you could do if necessary. But mostly the PDF is kind of you get what you have, and then there's limited options to use that somewhere else. But the advantage is it does look just like what you see in the preview. So that's kind of the comparing and the contrasting. Again, really depends on what you're going for, what you need. Each of these can be helpful in certain circumstances. A couple of questions here. One is about the Excel. So it says if there's a way to keep the Excel formatting we selected, that it's always going back to quick. I might have to play around with that a little bit. I would have suspected that once you change an option here, it would stay the same. But based on your question, it sounds like it's always going back to quick. So for example, you wanted to do all instead for the formatting, and then we generate the Excel sheet, then it's when we come back, it's being set back to quick, is what it sounds like. Maybe we can try that here. Maybe I'll set it to none and just print to Excel. So just to show this here, over here on the left are the options for configuring the output. When you actually want to generate that report, you would press the print to button. And so in my case, I'll print to Excel. And so with Excel, it's going to, ARM actually literally opens the Excel program and generates the spreadsheet within the Excel program, just kind of the way that Excel has to work. And so in this case, we get a different spreadsheet for each report. So as you can see, the header doesn't come in very nice. It doesn't look quite the same, but definitely, table information from a report works very well. And now, of course, you could utilize this somewhere. But yep, as you noted, the formatting comes right back to quick. So that's a great point. I'll have our programmers look into that. I'm just jotting this down just to see if that's intended to be that case, or if it should be saving that option. Because typically, most report options, you set them and then they stay that way, of course, but I'm not sure. There might be some extra reason why this one always goes back. Goes back to quick. So thanks for bringing that up. Another question here for the Word reports, is there a way to force the font type and the size for RTF fields? So a little background on that. I'll close this word processor. The RTF fields would be, if you're not familiar with the rich text fields, they are like in your site description, some of these large fields where you have like a miniature word processor when you click into them. And so this is really rich text is what they call it. It's formatted text that you can enter in. It works great to copy and paste if you have like a Word document as your official protocol when you first are generating and planning your experiments. Then it's nice to be able to take some of that information and just paste it into your ARM protocol or your ARM trial. Or if you have images or graphs, things like that, you can paste right in here. You can format the text, do all sorts of things with it, bullet points, what have you. So that's a powerful tool just for bringing some life to your site description. But yeah, there is a slight, I don't know if I'd call it a downside, but just the result of that open-ended ability to put in information, including the font size here. Let me actually increase the font size here a little bit so it stands out. You can change the font size and the font itself too, to totally something different. So that all that capability is in those fields. So if we want the site description report, here I'm just going to clear out what I already had and just do the standard site description form. Now, if we preview this on the screen, we will have this information in the objectives will get put on the report. And so as you can see, all of that formatting comes across, which is great, but can also have that downside as you're pointing out, that the font size, the font type might be quite different from everything else that's on the report. Unfortunately, we don't really have an option as we try to print out to Word or for this report in general to be able to standardize that. So I would say really if you wanted to make that document all the same, you would probably need to go into the fields and you could just select all of the text and then set the default. I think it was what Microsoft sans serif, wasn't it, or something like that. Whatever it was. Oh, that's a weird one. To whatever we had before. Those are all just weird. At any rate, you would just set that text back, and it would unfortunately have to be manual, just because that's just the way those fields work. They're just going to bring all of that formatting across. A great question, and does highlight some kind of a trick for livening up your reports sometimes. So I like to recommend that. We showed that a little bit in the graphing webinar a few days back, that as you generate a graph, if you want to include a graph or really any image in a report, you could actually paste that image into one of these rich text fields. And then when you generate that site description report, those images will be in the report. So there's a lot of functionality you could sneak in there that otherwise, the report might be a little dry as we're just generating, spitting out the data you've entered. These rich text fields give some creativity, some options for sprucing things up. So that actually is just a great plug for that. You mentioned some styles that are pre-configured, so perhaps these might be helpful. I haven't done too much of that working with the styles, but yeah, that might be a good approach. So then if you have all that text, which again I have just my weird font, but that might be an easy way to select all the text and just apply the that style. So that might be a good way to, looks like that's doing a little bit of it, and it would just be a matter of, yeah, setting your font the way you would want and then make that as a style. I think that's a great idea to at least help. Again, it would be manual, but at least it would save time of actually clicking and choosing everything as you went through that. So I've got one other question here about the AOV, and actually it's a great example that I think we could create without too much trouble. The scenario is trying to generate the AOV means table report. So let me do the trial treatments and then the AOV means table. And so the question is that sometimes trying to go print this out, the tables with the AOV means, you end up having one or two treatments displayed on one page and then the other treatments are on a second page. And so I think doing this setup here, hopefully we can replicate that. And here I'm going to have this option on to kind of demonstrate. So what we end up having is on this first page, our list of treatments or whatever report you have, and then we're starting the AOV means table halfway down the page. And so then what happens is we can only get so far. In this case, I am able to get 7 treatments here on this page, and then it cuts off and my 8th treatment is on a totally separate page. And then we get all of our statistics finishing it out. So we kind of end up having a mess. And then of course, this extends to other pages as well. So now this page up here has a bunch of blank space up above, and then just this floating extra column that's over here. And the reason, of course, is ARM's trying to make sure these pages would line up. So if you were to print them out and put them on a desk, it would at least make sense that they would line up. But it definitely, when you look at just this page number 3, looks pretty goofy. And so my first recommendation for fixing an issue like this is to turn off this page break option. So actually we want to include the page break, do not remove the page break. And now when we preview, this will force the AOV report to start on a brand new page. And typically that is what's needed to fit nicely. So here, page 2 now is where we actually start the AOV table, and now we have room to fit all of the treatments and statistics together on the report. The other suggestion I would have, if your list of treatments is pretty lengthy and you're struggling just to fit this all onto one page even, you can also choose the header lines. So sometimes maybe it's a little excessive that you don't need quite so many of these fields. Some of them might not be too important for a final report. And so that's another suggestion. You can shorten the height of the report a little bit by dropping some of those out. And just to show you where that option is, I will go previous to take us back to the report page. And so for the AOV means table, this is actually on the general summary options. You can choose what assessment header rows get included on the report. So automatic works pretty nice. It'll just drop out any rows that are totally empty and give you anything that has information in it. So that's generally helpful, but if you are finding that you want to cut down on that a little bit, you can change that to select. And now when we press next, ARM will actually ask us, which of these header rows do you want to include? So here I can either type in the number of the row, or I could go down here and click on each one. So maybe I only really need my pest code and the crop code, and I don't really need the scientific name for this report. Then let's just take the rating date, the rating information, subsamples, and maybe just my treatment interval and any action code. So you can just choose, go down that list to pick which pieces you want. And now that will shorten down the size of that header, which can be real helpful for just fitting all that information that you have in the AOV report. Now you can see this top section is much shorter, much more condensed for us. So if we did have a lot of treatments, you'd have plenty of room to fit them all on there. Great questions. Those are definitely, especially this time of year as people are trying to get their summaries together. That's kind of one of the more common questions is this AOV table is making a mess of my report. So the page break and then also just picking your header rows are great ways to combat that. All right, excellent questions. So I think we covered just about everything here. Just one mention, as we do generate these files here, there is a file name format. So this will be what ARM creates for the file name. And this would really apply when you generate a Word document and a PDF. As we saw with Excel, it actually just opens an Excel worksheet and doesn't even save the worksheet because ARM has to just send the information to Excel, and Excel generates, it fills in a report with that. But these other two, the Word and the PDF, generate files that you choose to save on your computer, and then you can open them up in either Word or Adobe. So that's how you can configure what components get included in that. All right, we are going to go back. So let me go to previous here and just show a few more options. We showed that general summary. Let me go back there just one more time since we were just there a moment ago. In the list of available reports, there is a group called summary. And so these are all kind of related to data. The assessment data summary will print out each of your data points and give you the treatment mean, but really no statistical analysis. It's just a nice summary of what data you have. The AOV means table, that's kind of the flagship analysis that's an ARM. But there is also a factorial version if you're doing a multi-factor study. There's a few other data-related reports. But all of those are, again, related to the data. And so there's a special section of report options relating to all of those. And that is this general summary tab. And so we showed how you can select the header rows for the report, or just set them to be automatic dropout and only show ones that have information in them. You can do the same thing with the data columns themselves. So typically, I'm setting it to automatic. You'll just get all of the data columns that have information in them. But you can, if you don't necessarily want all of them on your report, or if you want to change the order of your data columns, then you can choose select here. And again, ARM will pop up and ask you to choose which column numbers and in which order you want them in the report. So that can be helpful if there is a slightly different order that you would want. If you want a more systematic order, sometimes it isn't so much that you want to pick and choose the order. If you have 50 to 100 data columns that might get old, having to manually select when you want to just have it sorted by pest code. I want my columns grouped by the different pest or whatever. You can also use the current view and then leverage the view options in the assessment data editor. And you can sort or match to view only certain columns or change the order of the columns based on a certain field in the header. And so as you set your view, whatever you see on the screen and in whatever order, that is what gets used on the report. So that can be a powerful tool to really customize the data columns, and you can do the very same thing with your data headers as well, if you'd like. So if you're used to using the view options in ARM, you can leverage that standardization that you can do with those views. You can bring that to the reporting as well by just using that current view for whatever component you might be interested in. A couple more kind of data related options that are commonly searched for. There is an option for number of decimals accuracy. So if you have like calculated columns or decimals in your data and you want to limit the number of decimals to a certain number of decimals in the report, you can do this for all of the data columns in the report right here. So if you wanted only one decimal place across all of the columns on the report, you can set that in the report options. You can also, if it's not so much that you want every data column to have the same number of decimals accuracy, instead of using this option, you can also go column by column to specify decimals, and that is done in the assessment editor. It's one of the last header fields, number of decimals. So here I've got a bunch of integers, so there's not a lot of excitement there. But here I have a calculated column. And so I have one. If I wanted 4 decimals, you can see it's just going to change how many decimal places are displayed both on the screen, and then when you get to the reporting, that same number of decimals will be used. So that's how you can select column by column what decimals. If you just want kind of a blanket application of all of the columns on the report, that is done in the general summary. Finally, the last option I want to highlight, you can also drop out replicates if you need to. So if something happened and the whole third replicate got messed up somehow in this trial, in the report, you can turn this on. And again, when you generate the report, ARM will ask you, what replicates do you want to include in the trial? And so if we want to get rid of replicate 3 because it got messed up, you would just choose 1, 2, and 4. And then that whole third replicate in all of the data columns in the report will be ignored, will be dropped out of the analysis. So hopefully not one you have to use too often. That's a sign something went wrong, but it is available here, again, just at the very bottom of the general summary options if you need it. Couple of questions here. One is to print the median for a column and means for another in the same report. So we do have in the AOV means table report options, there are some mean descriptions. So the primary mean is the mean that gets generated and used in the analysis. We do have an option that you can include the median as well. And here, I neglected to point out, we can actually preview a single report on this screen as well. And this is really beneficial when you're changing an option, just to real quickly see what impact that may have. So here, we're only going to print the first 5 data columns just to give you an idea of what this report will look like. And so you can see here for each treatment mean, I also get a median. And I can customize whether I want that underneath or beside the mean, just depending on how you want that report to look. I'm just going to toggle back to the report preview, and it will just give us a snapshot of what that will look like. So here in data column 1, we have the means and the statistics. We also have the median there. So again, that was just in the AOV options, the mean descriptions. You can also get like a standard deviation or standard error or CV for each of those treatments if you wanted to. Next question here, configuring Word exports for site description data formatting. So some of that, let's clear the set and look at maybe our standard form. Most of these are already set. So I think in general, the site description report doesn't have too many options for that. think it's mostly the borders perhaps that would change some of that. So this would be the global settings here. I would change and change some of these different border options to see the differences. Here, let me bring up just the standard form on the preview. I'm guessing you're kind of referring to, here we have a box around this whole section that is the general trial information. So, correlating to the general trial tab, we have a box around that whole section. And then we have the title here on top. And so just as we change some of those global border options, that might change some of the options. If we take off the table around the header, that's mostly just the header information there. We just turned off borders in general. That might change how it appears. So there now we have no borders around those sections at all. Data inside the box on some reports being tables, others they are formatted more with tabs. So would that be specifically some of the RTF, the rich text fields, or some of the other values there on the report that you fill in with ARM? I'm going to put these borders back just so I can see. So some of the other fields. I'd maybe just have to play around with some of the options. Here we have a table, and that's because on the site and design, actually probably the previous crop section, do we have a separate section for that? It's supposed to kind of match what you would see on the screen. So there on the site and design, we have this table with that information in it. And so then as a result on the report, it shows up as a table. So I guess if you're seeing some inconsistencies between two different people on different computers, perhaps we could work together. I would just kind of try to get their report options from both computers, and we can compare to see if it is just there's an option difference somewhere along the line that could be causing that. And that's kind of the advantage of the report sets. If they're familiar, they want to generate a report set, that can be really helpful for troubleshooting for us. And if they're not too savvy with that, actually just to show in the help menu, you can request ARM support. And so we try to ask, categorize what question you might be asking. And if you have a question about the way your report's looking, this is really helpful to select this option because ARM can grab your current trial and your report options for you automatically. So you don't have to manually create a report set and send us that, but ARM will grab the file and the report options, package it all together into a zip file that you then send to our support box. And then that way on my computer, I can open up your trial, run your report options, and see what you're seeing. And then we can figure out what's going wrong or what option we need to change to be different. So that request ARM support is very helpful for us just to be able to kind of replicate what you're seeing on our computer and help us figure out what we need to change. So I'd recommend for you that report trouble that you're having, maybe have both computers generate this request and then send them to us and just let us know, this person is seeing the table and this person isn't, and we can look. So great questions. Well, we're just about out of time. Just real quickly, that one more option in the global report settings I want to point out. In the page heading, this is kind of configuring the very first line on that report. Here we just have a real brief preview so you can just see, you can choose what components are on that report as well as where they go. I just want to point out a useful function here that you can actually include your company logo at the top of your reports as well. So you would just click this button and browse to an image that you would have on your computer. So if you have your company logo in your pictures folder on your computer, then you just press the button, upload that logo into here, and then there's a plus minus to fit that size where you'd like it. And you can center it on the page or put it wherever you would want on that top line. But that's a real nice way to add your logo onto the report. Kind of makes it a little more official. So I just wanted to highlight that. That's in the page heading in your global options to include that logo. All right, well, that is just about time. Certainly, if you have more questions, let us know. But hopefully you found this helpful. Save some report sets so you can automate your time and not have to spend so much time poking through those options. In general, I would recommend, as if you're working on reports and you want to know if it's possible to do something different, or you're looking for an option and you just can't find it, shoot us an email. We know all of the options where they're at. There's a lot of them, so definitely don't spend tons of time digging for them when you can just shoot us an email and we can point you in the right direction. Yeah, just to stay in touch. I rolled out another set of webinars out on our website. You maybe had gotten our email from us if you're subscribed to our newsletter. So hopefully maybe we'll be seeing you at a future webinar. But in the meantime, thanks everyone for your time and your questions, and have a good day.